Yo, what's up guys? We're getting close into a balance patch once again. End of May, we're expecting a balance patch. Currently, as of making this video, it's the 17th of May. I do expect a balance patch in 2 weeks from now, so that would be probably either the 26th or 27th of May. But let's do some predictions of what we expect for this balance patch, because once again, it is a perfect timing where we have SWC or a season not ending or anything at all. The next balance patch will probably be during like a Siege tournament, or I don't even know exactly when the Siege tournament is. Okay, it's not that close towards a Siege tournament because Siege tournament ends in July, and end of July we are expecting another balance patch. But that is going to be very close to SWC prelims. So for that reason, if they're planning to do anything big, it might be this one. We have said it many times already. If they were expecting anything big, it will be this one, and then the next one, and that kind of stuff. So probably it's still going to be garbage, but if they want to do something big, now is the moment. Also, the last balance patch was one of the most lackluster balance patches we had out there. Also, the last balance patch we had was one of the most lackluster balance patch out there. However, I kind of want to give them some credits for the fact that a lot of units are around 50 win rate. Like, a lot of these units are actually, if we're scrolling down the list, and also in Guardian ranks, a lot of these units are around 50 win rate. Irration is down to 50, Shumar's to 50, but we're still expecting a bunch of nerfs and potentially also buffs. So let's do a few predictions. So first of all, the very first unit, it's gotta be Dark Aragorn, right? He is at a 54 win rate in Guardian 3. How is the win rate looking? Yeah, win rate across the board. He's just the highest win rate unit across the board. Plus, keep in mind, this number that is added over here is his number in the 4v4. So if he's actually let through in the match, so if he's banned out, he even has a pretty substantial ban rate for that reason. So Dark Aragorn is definitely looking at a nerf. But then what are the nerfs that we're expecting? So I wrote down a few things for nerfs already. I do expect Contours to do some dumb shit, which they also did do to the Gianna, and rather than making this a 100% activation, they're gonna make it like a 50% activation, or 75% activation, or 85% activation, or any kind of that kind of nonsense. I hope they don't, but if I have to do a prediction what they will do, I'm expecting them to just have this on a lower activation, and if they're lucky, they still land all three, and if they're unlucky, they land 0. It's gonna be some of those things. It will definitely nerf his win rate for sure, but I hope they don't do it. What they could do also is the skill 3 is make it a 2-hit, and then also put it to no slow. I think that those things make a little bit more sense. The skill 2 is still very strong, but since the skill 2 is also overlapping with the water one, if they nerf the skill 2 for both of them, they have to buff the skill 3 for this one over here to probably become like a 3-turn immunity or anything like that. But I hope that this unit is definitely going to get nerfed. Like, I'm 100% sure that this unit gets nerfed. I will be very surprised if that's not the case. But the big question is, does he get like Venton / Gurkha hardcore nerf, or does he get like a slap on the wrist? But we shall see about that. The next unit in line that I think is in way for a nerf is going to be the Dark Zenitsu. Also, once again, pretty high win rate. Win rate goes up at the moment he's more in the matches. Doesn't have as much pick rate, so I think it's more of a little bit of a slight tweak rather than like a really big nerf or anything. It is a really good unit, but it's also mainly a meta counter unit. So the two nerfs that I have in mind for him are his attack bar gain. He gets a 15% attack bar gain for every crit, and he deals more damage for every crit he does. So I think the easiest way to nerf this guy is just making this 15% to a 10%, which means that the S2 will now get a lot less attack bar, because that is a 6 hits in total. It's 1 hit plus another 5. That normally gives him an 105 bar, but in this case, it will only give him a 60 bar. And then also the skill 4 will give him a 60 bar rather than a 65 bar. So mainly for the skill 2 cycling, also for the skill 1, those kind of things. Plus, you could lower his damage output by a bit, because he actually deals a lot of damage. He is, I think, the only unit in game that actually scales from critting, which is just kind of a weird mechanic, because he doesn't need anything. He doesn't need crit damage, he doesn't need attack, he doesn't need HP, defense, anything. It just needs 100 crit and then some speed, and he already rocks an insane amount of damage. So I think it will be fair if he just gets a little bit of damage lowering over here. We don't know the exact number that it is damage increasing, because of course it's come to us, and they don't like to tell us actual numbers for a lot of things. But yeah, either one of those two nerfs I do expect, and then the unit is still very good. Another unit that I'm expecting for a nerf is Shumar. And Shumar not necessarily for RTA. I think in RTA he's kind of figured out a lot of things that do counter him is like slows from a Layla, Annabelle slows, Also an Escher boosting your own team to have more speed than the enemy. So it's everything to deny the passive of the Shumar. So in RTA, he's kind of figured out. There's a lot of units to kind of do that. But in Siege, especially with the Morris, Rex, and Shumar Siege defense, this thing is just absolutely a menace. So much damage, so tanky, so hard to kill, so annoying. Maybe more of a Morris issue as well, but hey, we can talk about Morris in just a second. But since this one is a little bit overlapping between RTA and going for Siege, I do expect him a bit of a nerf. And there are 2 things, or actually 3 things they could do for nerf on him, and that's all related to his passive. So currently he gets 50 extra crit, could be a 25 extra crit. I think the speed extra, I think they will keep that in there, but I can also lower this damage decrease by a bit. Plus there's also a part to his kit, where the moment that his HP worsens, he gets even more. So yeah, that's those kind of things you could all just tweak that to make that lower. And I think he will be fine for Siege, but I think they should definitely do something because in the lower ranks of Siege, this thing is absolutely a menace. Because this is the side where we can track like the Siege win rates, and it's all like Shumar defense, Shumar defense, Shumar defense, Shumar defense, Shumar defense. So this is all in G3. The moment we go to G1, it's still Shumar defense, and this thing has like crazy amount of win rates. So it's just all over the place Shumar defense that are doing very well right now. So a little bit of a tweak could be nice. Or maybe the issue is actually the Morris. Who knows? Another unit that I'm expecting for nerf is the Widnabara. I think in G3 people kind of know how to counter it. It's only on a 50 win rate. But the moment we go into lower ranks, this thing is just a menace. This thing is just stupid. This thing is just so unfair. It's like, oh, the enemy took 2 turns when there was like a dot for 2 turns and now half your team is dead. It's like, what the actual hell? So the main counters to it, or the main nerfs to it, I would say are going to be her damage decrease. And with the damage decrease, I mainly mean for this one over here. Now it's doing 25 damage. I would say that 25 damage to maybe a 20 damage, so at least you need to take 5 turns. So right now the thing is, if you take 3 turns already with a little bit of chip damage, it is already enough to kill you in most cases. So that is at least going to be a little bit less. Or you could also lower the bar by a little bit, that you have less of an attack per game. But this unit, it's not necessarily nerf it because it's OP, nerf it because it's very fucking stupid. And in the meantime, also OP. Next unit, and that's more of a little bit of a hope of mine rather than I really do expect it, which is going to be Gandalf. Is he higher in lower ranks? Not as much as I expected. So this unit is just a menace and just annoying, and like, oh, the whole enemy team dies because you put up a reflect. Like, that shit just stupid. So easiest thing they could do is add 1 more turn for the cooldown, which maybe kind of breaks him on the S2. There's also an option right there, because in this case, you would buff this one, and or if you would nerf this one over here, the light and the wind do share a similar thing. I am fearing for my life that this unit gets like fucking OP, because we have 115 base. It shares this skill, but the moment that this, the wisest, gets more OP, this thing might actually become really a menace. So I'm a little bit scared of that if they nerf that S2. So it would be maybe more reasonable thing to nerf the S3 to just get less attack bar gain the moment you hit anything on a shield. And that could go down to like 10% in my opinion. So at least not when you do AoE, you give like 80 bar to this Gandalf thing and he procs 2 times and he has a stupid shield back again. So that is my prediction for a Gandalf, but that's also maybe a little bit of a hope for it, I guess. Then we have 3 units over here, which is going to be the Irration, Layla, and a Megumi and She-Hope. So those are the most core picked units. At least these 3 are the most core picked. If we go to Punisher, it's still kind of similar-ish. But since all of them are that close to a 50 win rate, I don't really expect them to get a nerf. Even Layla is still on a low win rate. Same for Hey Gang is on a low win rate. Layla every time below 50 win rate. So sure, Layla can do a lot. But since they're just showing that much of a low win rate, I don't really expect them to get a nerf in all honesty. So therefore, I would say no changes, even though a lot of people would like to see them getting changed. But I just, as a prediction, I don't expect them to get anything changed. Then let's talk about a bunch of buffs. Starting off with the Legolas family. And I'm all up for less RNG and more sense making, which is like 2 to 5 hit, remove that shit, make it 3 to 4. Like, there's enough RNG to this game already. We don't need like a crazy next level all Hail Mary RNG god tier unit that if you always proc and always 5-shot, like the value of you absorbing is like 2.5 times as much. Your damage output is 2.5 times as much. Why? Because you RNG'd. Like that. Come on, man. Get that shit. Keep that shit hidden. Plus, in the meantime, I do think that Light Legolas also would have more value from that if you always go for a 2-hit. Plus, I have a buff in mind for this one as well. So Legolas, I think Light Legolas is one buff away from being good. The Wind Legolas doesn't really give a shit about the skill 1 anyways. It's more of like the Fire Legolas and the Light Legolas that care about this stuff. Then a Fire Gandalf. Currently, definitely not meta, not used anywhere, and we were talking about actually a pretty simple buff for this unit because he does have a leader skill for general crit rate. What if we make a general leader skill for a global speed lead? I think it would be viable. He's kind of close in like the water with a Chiwu where he has an AoE speed lead or like a speed lead plus an AoE strip. But he's a bit more multi-hits. He's a bit more of like slightly different things. And yeah, I could see that being a thing. Maybe he gets a little bit too close to being a Chiwu at that moment, but Chiwu pushes back. This one has like a little bit more additional damage artifacts. Chiwu has a little bit more focus on crit damage style of damage. This one has a slow in there. So could be a thing. I think that's the only way that I would see this guy getting viable. Fire Aragorn, I think, is a really bad unit at the moment, and easiest buff that I could think to him is how about he starts self-healing on his S3. So now he heals an ally the moment that he goes for a counter, but I think he should also heal himself. Otherwise, he's just like, sure, he's healing the other unit, but you already have a defense on that unit. You are taking the damage. Or wait, does he already do that he self-heals? It's one of those things that always read a little bit ambiguous. It's like all allies is all allies including self. I think it might actually be including self, and I'm just saying nonsense, and the unit's still shit. And the buff I wanted to give, he already has, and he's still regarded shit. Then, to be honest, let me know in the comments what you think that should be the buff on this unit, because I actually have no freaking clue what should be a buff on this unit. But he's pretty garbage. Then for Wind Gandalf, I mentioned it already. I hope not, but I do expect something like there's immunity to attack bar decrease. What if you get attack bar gain when there should be attack bar decrease? If there was a shield. Or maybe you do this part always, and then with a shield you get attack bar gain, or something like that. I hope they don't do it. You will be an annoying piece of shit. But knowing counters, they love to add passive units being an annoying piece of shit. So, as a prediction, I hope not. They might do it. Legolas on Light, I mentioned it for the skill 1. It's going to be a 3 to 4 hit, I hope. And then the skill 2, just make this a 4 hit. So, going to be the same amount of damage, but it has a lot more for the attack bar decrease. It gives you more attack bar gain, that kind of stuff. So, I think that gives him a bit more of a value where he becomes strong. I think the passive is fine as is. Some people would say it's like, oh, remove this defense part, but you cannot give him extra HP because that wouldn't make sense. You cannot give him extra speed because that would make him way too OP. So I think the defense is a little bit of sustainability. You could remove this defense by maybe making a straight up damage reduction. That is the only thing that I could say is like you could maybe do to him. So he gets attack bar gain and attack power. And then rather than defense, he just gets a straight up damage reduction. I think that would actually be nice. So it is 5 up to 100. Then it should be like the damage reduction should be by max like 30, 40, or maybe 50%. Of course, you're not going to do like 100% damage reduction on him. But yeah, I think a damage reduction rather than defense, because defense cool and all, but yeah, for what? Sonya trapping in turn 50? Like, what's the point? Like, it's way better to just have more HP or just reduce the damage because of add damage, ignore defenses, and that kind of good stuff. Or is Arena lead, you make him into a speed lead, because this whole family does have Arena leads as well, but does any one of them have a speed lead? No, not really, right? This thing, HP lead. No, this could also be a family that could get a speed lead. So if we're adding a speed lead somewhere, this could be a speed lead, and then it would be a 28 speed lead for Light, which we don't have as of yet. So that could be a speed lead, a Light 28 Arena. Would he really make that good? Well, in the end, yeah, speed lead that kind of has value outside of the rest of the match in a bruiser style. I think that would make him decent. I wouldn't be surprised if they add him on that. Then we have a Dark Gandalf, absolute trash of a unit. And to be honest, I don't know how to buff this. Let me know in the comments if you have the unit and you probably have thought about it. Sure, you could add more damage. Sure, you could add more multi-hits. But I think it's one of those LD5s that is like stay shit, stay salty. I think that's the new category that I'm going to put in tier list from now on out. And it's just like, what do we put in there? Pure vanilla cookies. What else do we put in there? Like, well, Leona's kind of out of that meta right now, but there are just a few units that no matter what they buff slash change as a law, that kind of stuff is like stay shit, stay salty. Like that unit just remains bad, and it's just bad for the reason of being bad. I don't know. They want just what bad shit. It's the same as you getting a flat HP slot too on like a 29 speed or something like that. They just want some shit to be bad, I guess. And then stay shit, stay salty. Then after that, I wrote down a bunch of stuff. After that, because these are the collab units that were added 2 balance patches ago, so therefore they're most likely focusing on those. After that, it's a Hail Mary of whatever random shit, like the dartboard, buff Molong, or buff Tricks again, or buff Feng Yang again. Give Grogan another 8% damage buff for no reasons. Humble, stay shit, stay salty kind of style in there. So what do we expect? As mentioned, whatever, there is going to be some kind of LD5 going from 0 to hero. Odds of ones that are pretty bad is like a Dark Nina, Dark Jin, Light Aya. Those kind of things are still out there that are really bad. Or something completely random, of course. Now, well, Grogan, as mentioned, 8% damage buff for absolutely no reason. They have been doing that a bunch of times. They probably will buff some random 4-star for Siege. But one thing that I would also like to see is Morris getting a cap on his dices. So, same thing that they did to the Oracles, where Oracles can only sleep 2 in a row, and then the third time they don't take an extra turn. Morris should be able to be on the same point that if he already took 2 turns by the dice, he cannot take a 3rd turn from the dice or something like that. Just like Morris is the only unit I've seen in Siege win 1v3 when Morris is 10% HP and the enemy team is 100% HP. That should not be a thing. Like, one unit on 10% HP should not be winning against the whole lineup of like full HP units. Why? Because Morris felt like dices. It's just... No, man, that's just stupid. Most of the time for units that are bad, they do kind of take units that are all the way at the bottom and they kind of buff those. This tier list was made as a global tier list back in January. They did already try to buff a few units, so the Draken Warriors are already buffed. Warangs were already tried to be buffed. We did see a Nosuke buff that is actually meta right now, so most of the time the units that you do see all the way at the bottom, like this one, that one, are kind of at like a way higher stand right now. There's also a bunch of this tier that just are on the tier of like stay shit, stay salty. But yeah, I guess that's one of these units that weren't addressed yet. Might get like an addressed version of it in the next balance patch. Like, that's pretty good odds. Anything like that 65 or below, that might get a buff there. Same for the LDs. These were the LDs that I placed at the bottom. Jaeger was already buffed in a previous one. Salah, they tried it, but it's still kind of garbage. They tried it with Liliana as well. Leona, they also tried it. So a bunch of these units are kind of already addressed. Only the Jaeger actually made it out where he became pretty decent. But yeah, all of the others are kind of like mid-ish. Also, sure, some of the metas kind of changed, where Cadiz now is actually kind of viable. Berkhild is kind of viable. So metas do shift a little bit even without balance patches, where some units become viable and other units just kind of drift out of meta. But yeah, we'll see. Probably something that you have here at the bottom, some of those will get buffed. And that's all for my balance patch prediction. Of course, the moment the balance patch hits, you're gonna find me going live reviewing that balance patch. Of course, always rating that stuff. Often the balance patch feels really shit at first, and there's maybe still then 1 or 2 things that might be interesting. Such as that we had with this one balance patch where they did absolutely nothing but buff the Jogun, and then Jogun became meta, and then Sierra became meta, and like a bunch of other things became meta and stuff. So still sometimes like a very small minor buff might actually be a thing. But let's see, last balance patch was definitely kind of lackluster. The one before at least enabled the Eresion and the Solvark, which changed the balancing quite a bit. So let's see what the next one is going to be. This one kind of maybe was a little bit lower because also Schumer was added to the table, which had like a new flavor to it. But let's see what the next balance patch is. Is it going to be a disappointment? Probably. Is your LD5 not going to be in there? Of course, guys. Thanks a lot for watching for this one. If you don't want to miss out any of the other content, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't yet, like this video, and see you as always in the next one. And also let me know in the comments, what is your hope for the balance patch? But be a little bit reasonable. Don't be like, my LD5 should get a nuke that the moment that the turn start of that unit, he kills the whole enemy team, and it only works for me. Yeah, that kind of shit ain't gonna happen. You're also not gonna add a Jaeger, Ragdoll, Nefty's passive into another unit to make that OP. So keep it reasonable. But I'm curious about your guys' ideas. Well, guys, thanks a lot for watching. See you later.
Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.